move on to the next category. We've got two here. We've got alternatives for saying things loudly and also alternatives for saying things in a scared or worried way. I nervously entered the pub the following Saturday. What do you want? Shouted Emily, the other waitress, who was hoovering the floor. I'm the new waitress, I yelled back in response. John, the new waitress is here, screamed Emily to the landlord, John. Nice to meet you, John, I trembled. How old are you? Boomed John, who clearly had a temper. 15, I stammered. Why are you so young? He exclaimed. I was just born a little late, I stuttered. Oh dear, John is not very happy, gulped Emily. Right, let's take a look at the vocab. Firstly, let's look at the loud alternatives. We have to shout and to yell, which means you're using the top of your voice, you're speaking very loudly. We also have to scream, which means even louder. To boom is a good one. This means you say something in a very imposing, low but loud voice. And we also have to exclaim. This means to say something loudly but also showing a bit of surprise. Moving on to the alternatives that you can use when you're scared. We have to tremble, which means you're shaking if you're trembling. We also have to stammer and to stutter, which means you're struggling to say your words. So sorry, that's me stammering or stuttering. The words aren't coming out smoothly. And we also have to gulp. And this comes from when you go, you know, when you're scared of something, you swallow. It's a good way to show that someone's worried about somebody's reaction or something that might happen. Okay, now we can move on to the next group of words, anger. So John and Linda, the landlord and the landlady, were a very passionate couple. They fought like cats and dogs, but they loved each other very much. Here's an example of the first interaction that I heard between them on my first day. Where have you left the bottle opener? Demanded John. How should I know? Snapped Linda. You were the last one to use it, he thundered. No, I wasn't. You had a drink after closing yesterday, she fumed. Well, you must have moved it, he barked. I swear I haven't touched it, she hissed. Whatever, I've just found it, he grunted. Every time, she ranted. So there are 8 here. It turns out there are lots of ways to show anger and annoyance. So to demand is to ask, but in an angry or insistent way. To snap is to say something in a quick or hurried way, normally with a negative attitude. So Linda said, how should I know? Really quickly and nastily. We have to thunder, that's to say something very loudly and imposingly. To fume is to really show your anger whilst saying something. To bark, well, it comes from the sound a dog makes. They bark, and it's to say something like that, very loudly and maybe a bit aggressively. To hiss, this is a good one. This is when you're trying to hold in your anger. I said I didn't do it. You maybe keep your mouth quite closed. To grunt, that's when you say something gruffly without much effort. Whatever, I've found it. Similar to that, it's definitely a negative term. And then we have to rant, which is like to nag. You've done this and this, you haven't done this. It's to moan at someone. Okay, on to the next one. I have combined saying things in a bossy way and saying things quietly. The waitress Emily made it quite obvious that she didn't want me to be there. She made me do all of the rubbish jobs, so I was hardly able to leave the kitchen. It was quite ironic, as she had a terrible attitude and most of the customers hated her. But she insisted on doing all of the serving work. I had to stay in the kitchen. To start today, you need to clean the toilet, she commanded. Not a problem, I mumbled. Then, you can finish the washing up that I didn't do last night, she ordered. Okie dokie, I muttered. After that, you have to polish all of the knives in the cutlery drawer whilst I go and serve the customers, she dictated. Shouldn't I learn how to serve the customers too? I whispered. I'm the only person qualified to talk to the customers, she insisted. So let's look at the bossy alternatives. We have to command, to order, to dictate. These are all alternatives for telling someone what to do. We also have to insist, and this is to really emphasize that you want someone to do something.